Hey, good morning, fourth grade. It's Mrs. Heropoulos. I'm here with my cup of tea to read some more King Arthur. Let's see, we're on chapter 11, How the Quest Began. Wait a minute, let me take a sip so I'm awake. As the shadows began to creep from the oaks across the meadow on long June evening, the entire company followed the king to supper every night in his place. Suddenly there was a terrific peal of thunder. A beam of light 7 times more bright than sunlight slid into the hall and filled the entire palace with brilliance. Nobody could speak, and they all sat stone still. Down the beam of light guided the Holy Grail, a cup covered in white silk so that no one could see it, nor could they see if anyone carried it. Once again the boundaries of the Grail were displayed, the beautiful smell, the food, and the drink that delighted each man most. Down the hall went the holy vessel, and then it vanished. After a while the power of speech returned, and the king gave thanks to God for showing them all the Grail on this feast of Pentecost. But thanks were not enough for Sir Gawain. He struck the table and stood up. "We have had whatever we desired to eat and drink," he said stormily, "but one thing we were denied. We did not see the Holy Grail because it was completely covered. So I here make a vow that tomorrow, without delay, I shall set out upon a quest of the Holy Grail, and that I shall keep up a year and a day if need be, and I will never return to court until I have seen it more openly than it has shown here." There were shouts of agreements, and one by one the knights rose and took the same oath. Sir Lancelot knew that the motive was wrong, because it had been God's decision not to show the holy object openly to their eyes. But he also knew that the entire day had been leading up to this, and the roots of all lay in far, far back, and were not for him to disentangle or deny. So he took the vow. As a knight after knight pledged himself, King Arthur foresaw the breakup of the Round Table, the scattering of its members, and the ruin of its work in the kingdom. He foresaw all the force on the side of law leaving Britain on this quest, and evil rearing itself again. He would be old and have no band of young men to fight for right. Tears were in his eyes as he faced his nephew. "Alas, you have killed me by this vow," he said, "for you have broken the most glorious and truest order of knighthood that was ever seen in any kingdom of the world. When they leave here, I know that they will never meet again, for many will die on this quest. I regret it very deeply, for I have loved them as my life. The scattering of this fellowship breaks my heart, for it is a long time now that we have been together." "Ah, sire," said Sir Lancelot, "comfort yourself. It will be a great honor to us, much more than if we died in any other way, and we are bound to die sometime." "Lancelot," the king turned and looked at him, "the very love I have had for you all my life makes me so sad, for there has never been a king who had had so many worthy men as I have had today at the Round Table, and that is the cause of my grief." The king could not be comforted, and the queen and all the court felt the same foreboding. Every woman wept, and every man felt that a time of greatness was coming to an end. The entire town was stirred by the preparations for so many farewells. The queen sent for Sir Galahad, and had a few words for him in case she never saw him again. At last the time came for bed, though no one could rest. The king ordered Galahad to sleep in the royal bed that night, and be lodged like a king. After a restless night, King Arthur went early to Sir Lancelot's rooms, and asked him if there were any possible means of stopping the quest. But one of the knight's chief oaths was to be true to his promise. Lancelot pointed this out. They both stood silent, and knew that the thing must run its course. Sir Lancelot put his hand on the king's shoulder, and so they stood a moment, these two close friends, of 20 years or more now, who had at all times been each other's first and chief support. Then they went together to join the Queen at an early celebration of Mass to mark the opening of the quest. After the service, 150 knights, all of the knights of the Round Table, took leave of the king and queen. A long procession of knights wound through the streets to the gate, followed by cheering and weeping townspeople. The king rode with his knights for the last time, with Sir Launcelot beside him. Neither spoke, for the king's heart was too heavy for speech. At the gate the king drew on the reins of his horse. Out rode his fellowship of knights, the most glorious band of men in any kingdom, famous for courage and honor. Each one saluted the king, who had created the knighthood that had made them more than any other men. Then, one by one, they spurred their horses and rode away. Chapter 12 is Sir Gawain on the quest. Sir Gawain meant well when he started on the Grail quest. He was proud and impatient, jealous and hot-tempered, but he was not cruel or wicked. If the quest had brought plenty of fighting and adventure, he would have done well, whatever the hardships or dangers he had to put up with. But nothing like that happened. Oh, sorry. Had to get comfortable, readjust myself. He set off in hot spirits, determined to dare any dangers. He rode all day and met no one. The second and the third day he met no one, only silent woods and deserted paths. He began to be depressed and irritated. At last he saw roofs and hurried there. It was an abbey, and the monks told him that Sir Galahad had recently been there. They told him all kinds of adventures that had happened to Sir Galahad. Sir Gawain was angry, jealous of the new knight who sat in the perilous siege. How foolish he had been not to go with Sir Galahad from the beginning. As he was dismounting, moody and disappointed, one of the monks guessed his thoughts and remarked that even if he caught up with Sir Galahad, they would not be likely to stay together long, since Sir Gawain was full of unpleasantness and Sir Galahad was not. This annoyed Sir Gawain very much, but he was cheered by the unexpected arrival of Sir Gareth, his youngest brother, with whom he was at least able to talk about things of the court. The next morning they rode off together. They met Sir Gawain... Okay, sorry, I get these names confused. Sir Uwaine le Avorte, who had also had no adventures at all, and they all three agreed to keep together, which was not the original idea of the quest. That day they passed near the Castle of Maidens, where 7 knights were on patrol. They had no quarrel with them, and they were supposed to be sworn to a holy quest, on which it was plain that no unnecessary killing should be done, but they were so bored that they had not only fought all 7, but killed them all, which was quite unnecessary. They felt guilty about this, and decided to separate after all. That evening Sir Gawain came to a hermitage and asked for shelter for the night. I am a knight of King Arthur who is on the quest of the Holy Grail, and my name is Gawain. The hermit looked at him and saw right into his heart in a disconcerting way. Sir, he answered gravely, I would rather know how things are between you and God. I am quite willing to tell you about my life if you want me to, answered Sir Gawain, and so he did. When Gawain finished describing his battle of the 3 against 7, the hermit said that Sir Galahad alone had unhorsed the 7, but did not kill them. He said that Sir Gawain would get nowhere by going on with this spirit, and he must start all over again. You must make amends for this killing, he said. Sir Gawain stiffened with pride. Sir, he replied, it is quite impossible for us knights on adventures to make amends. We have enough to put up with hardships in what we have to go. Very well, said the hermit, and said no more. All the summer he searched England for adventures and was completely frustrated. He met Sir Ector, who said that he had met 20 knights who had complained of the same thing. I wonder where that brother of yours, Sir Launcelot, is, said Gawain. Wherever Launcelot was, certainly things were to be happening. I have heard no word of him, said Sir Ector, nor of Galahad, Percival, or Bors. Well, if they cannot find the Grail, it is a waste of time for the rest of us to try. One Saturday evening in October, wet and rough, with darkness coming down early, they came to a ruined chapel by the side of a track. Although most of the roof was gone, there was one section that kept the rain out, so they decided to spend the night there. They alighted, took off their saddlebags containing the provisions, and made themselves as comfortable as they could. They talked a while, wondering where they were and how much longer it would go on. Then they fell asleep, and both of them dreamed a dream. Sir Gawain dreamed that he went into a field rich with good grass and flowers. It was in a herd of bulls, 150 black and 3 white. The white bulls were feeding and the black ones were not, but they looked restless and uneasy. They all said, "Let us go and look for a better pasture than this." And when they began to move out of the field, they saw that they were so thin and weak that they could hardly stand. The 3 white bulls went too. After a time, some black bulls came back, but only 1 white returned. Sir Ector's dream was that he and Sir Launcelot, his brother, took 2 horses and said to each other, "Let us go and seek what we shall not find." Then a man came and beat Sir Launcelot and took away his armor, made him put on a rough garment full of knots and get onto a donkey. He and Sir Ector rode until they came to a well, and both had a violent desire to drink. When Sir Launcelot stopped to drink, the water sank so that he could not reach it. He got up and went back the way that he had come. When they both awoke, Sir Gawain and Sir Ector told each other their dreams and pondered over them. "I shall not feel happy until I get some news of Launcelot," said Sir Ector gloomily. As they sat talking in the dark, suddenly they clutched each other, for there in the air in front of them floated a candle, clear and steady, held by a hand and forearm covered in red silk, with a crude bridle over the arm. The hand carried the candle past them and disappeared among the chapel ruins. A voice said, "Knights of bad faith, you may not find the Holy Grail." When they had recovered from their shock, Sir Gawain said, "Sir Ector, did you hear what I heard?" "Yes, indeed," answered Sir Ector. "I heard it all. We had better find a hermit to explain it, because it seems to me that we are doing this all for nothing." The next morning they rode on. In a valley they met a knight who used the proper salutes and gestures and offered to joust with them. Sir Gawain eagerly accepted the challenge. At the first charge his spear went right through the stranger's breast and came out at the back. When Sir Gawain bent over, he spoke muffled through his helmet. "I am as good as dead. I am of King Arthur's court and was a fellow of the Round Table, and we were sworn friends. I am Sir Uwaine le Aventure, and I was on the quest of the Holy Grail. May God forgive you, for everyone will say one sworn brother knight has killed another." Off came his helmet, and Sir Gawain saw that it was true. "Alas, that this should happen to me!" he exclaimed in despair, not thinking how eagerly he had accepted the joust. After this, Sir Gawain had no more heart for the quest. He and Sir Ector found a hermit who explained their dreams and the vision. The herd of bulls was the Round Table, and the good grass and flowers were humility and patience, which were always fresh and green, and in which people said the Round Table had been founded. But the black bulls were too proud to feed on the pasture. The white bulls were Sir Percival, Sir Bors, and Sir Galahad. The search for better pasture was the quest of the Grail, undertaken by most without humility. Of the 3 chosen knights, only 1 would return. In Sir Ector's dream, the Holy Grail was the object they could not find, but Sir Launcelot abandoned his pride and took on humility, wearing poor clothes and riding on a donkey. The well was the Holy Grail, and when he saw that he could not reach it, he went back and was ready to start all over again. The candle was the good life, and the bridle was control of oneself. The effort to control one's own will had failed in these 2 knights. They listened glumly. Sir Gawain asked why on this quest they had met with no events at all. The hermit said that their hearts were full of pride, and the Holy Grail withdrew from people like them. Sir, in that case, is it useless for us to go on this quest? The hermit answered, That is so. There are 100 or more like you who will get nothing out of it but dishonor. So Sir Gawain and Sir Ector asked the direction of Camelot, and they turned their horses that way. Sir Percival is chapter 13, and that is a picture of him. Okay, wait a minute. When King Arthur was a lad, Merlin the wizard spoke a prophecy. He said that 2 brothers would come who will have no equal in valor and good living, and their names would be Sir Percival of Wales and Sir Lamorak of Wales. Lamorak. Years went by, and the lads who were young with Arthur grew into men around him, and the first generation of knights, among them Sir Lamorak, established order and ruled in Britain. Their life was hard and rough, and they were constantly on horseback in arms. One by one of the knights of the Round Table hunted out people who defied the king, and they enforced law all over the country. It was a task that took all of their time. As time went on, however, this way of living drew to an end. Gradually, order became established, and the wicked were either killed or made to obey the law. The next generation of knights found a different kind of world facing them, in which they had to live well in a peaceful life without the threat of an enemy. These young men grew up quite different from their fathers. Thinking and acting rightly were more important to them than fighting. This was a very difficult thing for the older knights to understand. Only a few, like King Arthur and Sir Lancelot, who had always tried to think rightly as well as fight bravely, realized that the young ones were as good as the old and were better suited to new times. Most of the older generation simply disliked them. When Sir Percival came to court, he seemed another of the new type. Sir Aglavale brought him and asked Sir Arthur to make his young squire a knight. As King Arthur looked at the young man, who was so obviously different from his elder brother, Sir Lamorak, he saw something different in him beside the strong arm and quick eye of the fighter, and answered, For the love of Sir Lamorak, he shall be made a knight tomorrow. So he was, but the king and all the knights thought it would be a long time before he proved a good knight. At evening, at dinner, the king directed Sir Percival to sit with the unproved knights at the far end of the hall. Now, among Queen Guinevere's ladies, there was one who could not speak. On this particular evening, this maiden astonished everyone by coming into the hall as if she were followed by an angel and guide. She went past all the distinguished people until she reached Sir Percival. Oh, wait a minute, I gotta move because the sun's in my face here. There we go. She took him by the hand and spoke in a clear voice. Arise, Sir Percival, and go with me. So did he, and every eye in the hall watched them. She led him to the Round Table itself, put him by the seat on the right hand of the perilous siege, and said, Fair knight, take here thy siege, for that siege belongs to thee and none other. And then she fell dead. Naturally, everyone took a great deal more notice of Sir Percival after this. It soon became clear that he was an unusual person. He saw visions. He saw all sorts of things that he did not always understand. Spiritual creatures used to become visible to him, to put him to test and disappear. Some were good and from heaven. More were evil and from hell. But he was afraid of nothing. That other world of his seemed to give him freedom from fears in this one. He set out with all of the knights of the Round Table on the quest for the Holy Grail. One day he was riding with Sir Lancelot. Towards them rode Sir Galahad, who had already gone through Sir Percival's halfway world into the world on the other side that was sure and clear and heavenly. Sir Lancelot was realizing more and more that the things his son knew were more important than quests and battles of other knights, and that these things were the basis of King Arthur's laws. But when he and Sir Percival met Sir Galahad, they did not recognize him because he was disguised. They challenged him, Whereupon he charged his father and unhorsed him, and drawing his sword knocked Sir Percival out of the saddle. Sir Galahad then spurred his horse and rode fast out of sight. When they were able, Sir Launcelot and Sir Percival rode after him. On his way, Sir Percival was crossing a deep valley at midday, when a party of 20 horsemen came cantering out of a thicket of trees toward him and shouted a challenge, demanding from whence he came. "From the court of Arthur," he answered, and a yell came back, "Slay him!" He went down under a thunder of hoofs and a clash of arms. His good horse was killed, and though it half crushed him, it saved him from death by trampling. In a daze, scarcely knowing if he was another vision or actually happening, he saw a knight in the armor of Galahad and heard him shout, and then heard hard riding and the crash and crash of falling men in armor, and shouts of dismay and rough orders to retreat. He crawled out from under his dead horse just in time to see the Red Knight chasing the robbers back into the copse. He shouted, but Sir Galahad rode on. Now Sir Percival was in a very bad state, for he had no horse. In his armor he could walk only with difficulty. He sat by the road and waited for someone to pass, but no one had a horse to spare. When it grew dark, he went to sleep, and he was awoken at midday by a woman. He was awoken at midnight by a woman. She called him by his name and asked him fiercely what he was doing. He answered, "I do neither good nor ill. If you will promise me to do what I ask some time when I call on you, I will lend you my horse." Sir Percival was so delighted with the idea of a horse to get away from this desolate spot that he agreed at once. The woman went away and soon came back in the starlight with an immense horse completely harnessed as a knight's charger. Without waiting, Sir Percival mounted and rode off. As he came out of the valley, the moon rose and the horse put on speed. Faster and faster went the drumming hoofs. Hedges, streams, and open fields rushed up and were left behind. Still the pace increased, and Sir Percival realized that this was no ordinary horse, and that he was in the grip of an enchantment. He could not slow his steed, but clung to its saddle and felt the world rush by. In an hour they traveled 4 days' journey. Sir Percival saw a stretch of roaring water coming and knew that the horse was going to hurl him into it. Here he is on the horse. Quickly he made the sign of the cross. The horse gave a ghastly shriek and flung Sir Percival onto the ground. To his horror, he saw the animal turn into a devil that went into the water crying and roaring, and where it went the water burned in a track of fire. The sign of the cross is a gesture made by Roman Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, and Anglican Christians that traces the form of the cross between the forehead, breast, and shoulders to remember Jesus' death on the cross and ask for God's blessing. Sir Percival now saw that he was on a black mountainside ringed by the sea. He turned back from the coast. As he was making his way through the valley, he saw a big snake dragging a struggling young cub by the neck. In a moment, a full-grown lion came roaring and growling and began to attack the serpent. Sir Percival went with the help of the lion and killed the snake with his sword. When the lion saw that, he instantly became friendly, and by walking around and rubbing his head against Sir Percival and purring, he did all that a beast might do to make friends with a man. The knight stroked him on the neck and shoulders. So they stayed and rested all the morning, and the lion kept him company all day, and when darkness fell, they slept together. The knight had a horrible dream, and woke shuddering, but found the lion and stroked his mane and was reassured by him. The next day at noon, he saw a ship coming over the sea towards him. As it neared land, he hurried down to meet it. It was covered in black silk, and in it sat a lady, most beautiful, and dressed in great magnificence. She called him by his name, and said that she would bring him to Sir Galahad. He was so thankful to be rescued from this dreadful place that he never thought of questioning her. In the course of conversation, he made the sign of the cross. Instantly she rose up in a whirlwind and changed into a thick, swirling black cloud, screaming, "You have betrayed me!" and she fled over the sea, yelling and leaving a trail of fire. But her ship remained. Sir Percival said goodbye to the lion, went on board, and set from that grim shore. This is crazy interesting. We have a few more chapters left. Maybe... Oh, what were we just reading? We have about 6 chapters left. And that should finish next week. So, till then, I hope you enjoyed it. Keep drawing those pictures. Bye.